One of the major milestones of any fall camp is that first scrimmage. It means a lot for the players, obviously, for the coaches, and for us as fans in terms of trying to decide and make some guesses for us as fans especially about what this team's going to look like going forward. The things that we get out of those scrimmage are highly valuable in terms of us just trying to anticipate what we're going to be seeing out there on the field. We also had the opportunity at this latest first scrimmage of this season to hear from Coach Harsin and his thoughts and answer some questions after that. And so that's what we're going to be doing here in this video, is talking about that press conference, what was asked, his responses, and any other information that was shared there. If you like this type of content, and if you especially want more things like this from press conference and stuff like that, make sure that you subscribe by hitting that button below along with that notification bell. So what we did last time in this video, we're going to keep following that same format. I'm going to go right off my notes I have here, because the goal of these videos every single time is to give you a summary, right? That way, if you don't have time to go watch the full press conference, you don't have to. However, I do always stress to go check out that full press conference if you can, because then you'll get the full context of everything. That way, you don't have to just take my word for it, because this is going to be a summary with a little bit of my interpretation mixed in about the things that were asked and that were said. Coach Harsin started off with his opening press conference thoughts on talking about how the effort was there, but some urgency still needs to be cleaned up a little bit. He even brought out some people right away that stood out to him in terms of their overall performance, Camden Brown being one of those, and Damari Alston. Two big names that are newcomers and that have not, had a lot of attention from the Auburn fans until now, are starting to get a lot more attention from the coaches, from their peers, and obviously from us. Those are two of the players that he called out right at the beginning. He talked about the wide receiver core. Everybody got catches, and that Javarius Johnson had about 3. John Samuel Shanker had 2. Tyler Fromm had 2 as well. And obviously, we've already talked about Camden Brown. Those are the ones that he talked about, and John Samuel Shanker, along with Camden Brown, both had a touchdown in this particular scrimmage. The quarterback race. I know it's getting hot, and, everybody's starting to have their opinions about all of these different who should be the quarterback and stuff like that. But this is straight from Coach about what they saw and what maybe this can lead you down in terms of expecting. TJ Finley led the first team, the first drive of 14 play down, which resulted, and I think a lot of you have seen the video of the Camden Brown touchdown. Talked a lot about how well he did leading that drive and showing a lot of good things there. So he's obviously one of the guys that sticks out from the scrimmage. Calzada had a touchdown. I'm guessing it was John Samuel Shanker. I didn't hear another wide receiver mentioned with a touchdown or running back thrown for a touchdown, so I'm guessing it was Zach Calzada to John Samuel Shanker. Said some good things about him. Robbie Ashford also had some good things said about him, but he talked a lot about him doing a lot, not better, but improving in his overall operation of the offense. And not a lot mentioned about Holden Grenier specifically. I think that tells you all you need to know about the race, where it's at right now in relation to him. And he did express that it is getting closer to get to the question of who are those two, that 2 deep type of depth chart that we're going to be talking about. Anders Carlson, 4 for 4 on field goals. Do you need to say anything else? Looks like he's all better. Defense-wise, though, the quarterbacks were not live, so it's hard to really gauge who is doing what specifically in terms of sacks, hurries, things like that. But Iku Leota and Derek Hall, as you can imagine, are doing very well at getting off the edge and providing a lot of pressure on the quarterbacks overall. He did point out that they did a goal line thing at the end of the scrimmage where somebody forced a fumble, and I believe it was Craig McDonald picked up the fumble and ran it all the way back. It was a great way to end that particular scrimmage. After this, he did talk a little bit about our rough schedule that we're going to have for not the rest of fall camp, so to speak, because we're getting closer and closer to the season started, but for the next week. We're recording this Sunday. So Sunday, they are doing corrections today. Monday, they're going to be off. Tuesday, they start classes, and I'm sure they'll have some scheduled practices with a scrimmage on Friday. So that is going to be that second scrimmage, that all important that we talked about after the last press conference, but they're going to really start making some decisions about who is in that 2 deep scout team, travel team, all of that good stuff. So again, he reiterated no final decisions right now, but it has allowed them to start moving the pieces around on the depth chart to get to that final decision place, which is coming very, very, very soon. So those were his opening thoughts. Let's talk a little bit about the questions that were asked and his responses to them. Some of this will be a little bit repetitive because he addressed some of this in the opener, but we'll talk about it as much as we find some interest to talk about it. TJ's development compared to last year. This was his first question. Talked about his command of the offense and how that continues to stand out amongst the quarterbacks, and that his understanding not just of himself, but everybody's job on that offense is what he does really well. Did note that some of those easier throws they're not a struggle, but there's some improvement that could be made there. We all saw this last season. We know that's probably one of his weaker points. The coaches are aware, and I'm sure they're working on that with him. Asked about newcomers, portal players that are starting to stand out to him more as we get further into fall camp. Jason Jones, he mentioned Jeffrey Imba, especially getting better from that injury he had. Morris Joseph, again, gets the shout out for him. Talked about him being a little bit undersized for that position, but how he just has this, I think he called it suddenness, which is really helpful when you have that undersized at that position. Morris Joseph, I think, is getting a lot of praise from his coaches. Marcus Bragg, listen for this name this year. I'm getting really intrigued by this one. Talked about how he is just getting more and more opportunities because he's earning them out there on the field. Zaylen Worsham talked about how he's getting the reps that he needs. They're just not getting the ball to him, or he hasn't had an opportunity to catch the ball necessarily yet. And so they really want to see what he can do with the ball, where they really start making decisions about how he's going to contribute this year. Keontae Scott, who just got here, is catching up very fast. So that's your transfer portal newcomers that are standing out for Coach right now that he brought up with this question. Damari thoughts, again, he was asked about. Talked about how he makes great decisions, whether that is sticking with the play as it develops or being creative. And that's what you want in a good running back, even at this young age. Talked a lot about his great burst that he has when he gets out onto the edge. Offensive line assessment. More about individual stuff later, but just some general thoughts here. Said they were solid and just had a few penetration issues, but not a lot of negative plays, which is really exciting to hear because we had a lot of those last year and previous seasons as well. But also talked about how the D-line is really challenging them. Now, you can look at this a couple of different ways, right? Yeah, we know we've got the talent on defensive line, edge, whatever you want to call it, defensive tackle too. They are going to need to give them all they can in this offseason or this preseason, because we really are going to go up some of the best in the SEC, and we know how they've struggled against that at times. So the fact that they're getting pushed now is a good thing, even if it's showing some signs of not necessarily weakness, but signs of improvement. I like that that's happening right now from the talent that we have at the defensive line against the offensive line. Overall quarterback race elaboration, they wanted some more on that. He said that he's watching for not just when they're in on a play, but what they're doing on the sideline outside of the play, how they're operating on the field, but off the field as well. Who's aware of what, if they're making corrections before the corrections need to be made, meaning someone's heading to where they're out of line. That's something that sticks out to him in terms of leadership. He just wants his guys to be leaders out there on the field in terms of how he's assessing this quarterback race. About Robbie Ashford specifically, how do you gauge a guy whose talent set is mobility, getting around, without actually being live, which they're not yet for quarterbacks? He says that they know what he can do, but it is kind of one of those opportunities where you can coach him of what is in a tackle, what is a sack in these moments, and how you can adjust now before we actually go live, because he feels like he can break every tackle, which I'm sure he can. He's very talented. I hope he can, at least, if he's the starter. Evaluating leadership for the quarterback. We talked about that a lot, managing the play clock. This is some of the items on his checklist. Managing the play clock, leaving the huddle unorganized, correcting players who are lined up wrong, knowing it's wrong before it gets wrong. Those things that we've already kind of talked about. More wide receivers that stick out so far to him other than the ones he's mentioned. He brought up Camden Brown again, tells you how good this kid is doing in fall camp. Shed has continued to shine as a leader, as we expected, but they want to get him the ball more in practice. So that's something that they as a team want to improve upon, but he had a great catch in the scrimmage. Hilliard is showing the progress that we expected from a coach like that. He's really starting to show up now. That's exciting to hear. Coy Moore also had a great catch as well. They did try to ask him about that Bruce Pearl picture in relation to the whole John Calipari, Mark Stoops situation over at Kentucky. Y'all can go look that up if you don't know what's going on there. He just kind of laughed it off and didn't really elaborate on that, but I found that funny. Linebacker standouts. Here, this is the question that I really perked up on because I'm really intrigued by this linebacker group and think they could be the dark horse in terms of everybody's sleeping on them a little bit. So he talked about Steiner again. This is not the first time he mentioned him, but Steiner said he is not getting talked about enough by media, by everybody else. Steiner, Wesley Steiner, remember the name. Cam Riley is making some big steps forward in terms of how he's going to contribute this year. Asante is starting to catch up from some time that he missed for some personal reasons. Robert Woodyard, big talent, young guy from this freshman class. You would think he would make a lot of these freshman mistakes, and he is, but what's been impressive, he talked about one specific instance where he got blown back, and then immediately the next play corrected it, made that play. That's a really good sign for Robert Woodyard. Excited for him. The standard of that room, he used this phrase, has really elevated. I'm really excited about hearing that. Elaboration offensive line-wise in terms of reps and individuals. And he said Tate Johnson, Avery Jernigan are getting reps with the first team. This is really good in terms of depth in a time where we're all a little bit frustrated about offensive line recruiting and things of that nature is revolve around the offensive line story right now. That's a really good sign. Colby Smith as well, he said, is starting to grow into his body, so maybe he can get more into that depth chart and play a little bit more often, get some more reps to get him ready. Brendan Coffey is starting to shine a little bit more as well. Injury update. Talked about how everybody who had major injuries coming in to fall camp are out there and participating, and just your basic bumps and bruises. And finally was asked about pass coverage in terms of defensive backs and said that the big strengths of that are communication and their ability to move around out there. Kaufman continues to shine along with the mainstays of Pritchett and Simpson. It's a great group right there that you really want to hear about being the leaders of that defensive backfield. Caden Bridge is also making progress, and he also mentioned Marquise Gilbert. So those are the basic summary of the latest press conference with Coach Harsin after that first scrimmage. I'd love to know from you what stood out to you. If you had some piece of information that you picked up on from it that wasn't talked about here, let us know down there in the comments section below. We'll keep that conversation going. Until then, though, make sure you smash this like button if you enjoyed this type of content. It does help us out. If you want more from us, be sure to subscribe along with hitting that notification bell so you don't miss any uploads or live streams. And there's ways to help support us listed in the description, such as becoming a channel member here by hitting that join button, and also heading over to the Booster Club to join the patreon.com/E2C Network Booster Club, which starts at $1 a month there as well. Thank you for tuning into the E2C Network, where we share the whole Auburn experience. War Eagle.